Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. So tonight, short crew tonight. There's a short joke in there somewhere, but I don't want to make it. But we have with us Mala. How you doing, Mala?
Good evening. I'm doing well.
And hopefully we'll get back Mike next time, 2 weeks from now. He had some last minute engagements. Tracy should be back one of these weeks. She's still around, folks. You can see her in the opening credits, trust me. So, Mala, you are hosting a conference in a couple of months. Beginning data science.
It's not public yet, but this group gets to hear because we'll be going public tomorrow anyway. We, from the Women in Technology group, Kathy Kellenberger and me, we are planning a day full of beginner data science talks. So the website will be out tomorrow. Anybody who's interested in submitting, you're welcome to submit. And we think it will be an interesting day. We did a poll of 40, 50 people who suggested that would be their most preferred topic. So let's see how it goes. This is planned for August the 13th.
Excellent. And that's Shop Talk, breaking all the hottest news. All right, I'm going to try to move this. There we go. So that way, when I'm looking at Mala, it's not like I'm looking down. So congratulations, you're at King of the Hill tonight. All right. So both of us, it turns out, are speaking this Friday at Data Minutes. And we've already, a couple weeks ago, talked about most of my topic, which is all about learning how to learn. And I'm going to try to summarize it all within 10 minutes while being reasonably entertaining. So that will be this upcoming Friday. For me, it's 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Mala, you're talking about SMO?
Right. So I'm just talking about SMO is a really old topic. Nothing new, nothing fancy about it, but we did some good stuff with it at work at Channel Advisors. We got rid of quite a bit of the overhead around creating repo scripts, and we automated that process using SMO. So I'm going to be just taking people through a very simple process of how you generate scripts without using SSMS, just using SMO. That's what my talk is going to be about. And,
so when you create those scripts, do they have the same structure, the same shape as what you would get from Management Studio?
Yes. I mean, you have to set your options right. You have to make sure you pick all the objects and not leave anything out if you're scripting out the entire database. So there is some work involved. It has, I'd say, about 90% of what SSMS can offer. SSMS certainly has certain things that are more than it. Biggest hassle, what I found, is that it still cannot do create or alter. I know, very annoying. So you have to parse the object it generates and replace all the creates with create or alter. And I submitted an issue on GitHub for them to fix it. I don't think it's going to be fixed anytime soon, but that's the biggest one. And it cannot put things like it cannot do fancy headings for you, like SSMS will tell you what time it generated what and blah, all that stuff. It cannot do all that. It's just a dump of the code, simple dump of the code. But most of the other things it can do. And what was the other thing? There was one or two small things too, like continue on error and such, that option that it has, like if something happens in between to one of the objects, then SSMS can continue. I don't think anybody uses that, but that is an option that's available. It doesn't have that. Other than that, yeah, I'd say it's pretty close, and it works really fast, without a hassle, as long as you have the patience to set it up right.
Right. It probably works faster than Management Studio 18 does at scripting.
Yes.
I don't like how now when you right-click script create as, it's almost like a SQL agent job where it pops up a dialog that starts off, shows that it's running, and then eventually says, hey, I'm done. And in all prior versions of Management Studio, all you had to do was script create as new query window, and it would simply pop up. Now
Right.
it seems like it is adding time just to show you that it is running to do the same thing that it did before.
So I don't think that thing uses SMO behind the scenes, or what it uses is only partial SMO, because Mark and I did a bit of work trying to figure out why this thing cannot do something so simple and so old as create or alter. It
Right.
really it has to, but it can't. And they have some kind of a hack fix in SSMS that does just that. And when I submitted the issue, they agreed that that's not been fixed, so it cannot do that. And you have to text parse the object, and it cannot do certain things, like you don't like square brackets around the name of the object it creates and such. Those things also you have to fix manually. That's how it generates. And I know it annoys the heck out of some people on our team. They don't like it because that's not how our older scripts were. So those things you can fix if you know how to parse a PowerShell file and fix it. It's fairly easy to fix, but those don't come out of the box with SMO scripting.
Right.
Yeah.
I generally don't like the square brackets around object names either.
Right.
I understand the meaning behind them, and if it's a reserved keyword or something special where there's possible ambiguity, okay.
Right.
I'll do it
Yeah.
for indexes. I'll do it for things that have underscores just to make it clearer. But
Right.
for table names, no. Quote name forever. I am a fan of quote name, and I do agree that SSMS 18 is not great. The
No.
forced integration with Azure Data Studio, I don't think was a great decision, especially because if you did not install Azure Data Studio in a particular way, then you could have two versions of Azure Data Studio installed on your machine. And
Oh goodness.
yeah, if you have, say, system installation versus a user installation, if you're on the inner ring as opposed to the outer ring, it could end up you could end up with multiple versions of it installed as part of the installation process for Management Studio. And given the differences in the product, where Azure Data Studio is easier to create a lot of plugins for, if you're in an environment where they are very uptight about security, that could actually be a legitimate issue where, hey, wait, we approved all of the tools that came with SSMS prior to this, but now you're going to have us approve Azure Data Studio. Well, that's a process to get that installed. And I'm not saying I agree with the process in that regard, but for a lot of companies, that is a requirement that you can't install new software on here that hasn't been vetted.
Correct.
And you would think that simply going from 18.4 to 18.5, or wherever that switch was, I think it was 18.5, maybe 18.6, but when going from that subversion to this subversion, that all it's doing is updating binaries, that it's getting appropriate code updates, when in reality it's also installing a whole different product that has a different update cycle, that has a different update process, that has a whole separate plugin ecosystem, and in fact drives from that plugin ecosystem. So I don't think that was a particularly well thought through maneuver. And I know a lot of people in the community were really upset about SSMS bundling in Azure Data Studio.
Yes.
Marketing order. Yeah, honestly, I think it was to increase the number of Azure Data Studio installs. We've got it installed on this many machines around the world, and now it's catching up to Management Studio.
Does anybody use Azure Data Studio instead of SSMS though actively? I mean, I tried.
I do when I'm presenting. I do at home. I don't in the office. And part of that is I have code plugins that will reformat code to exactly the way that is the standard. And that standard is a rather complicated one. And the plugin that I'm using, I believe, does not have an Azure Data Studio version. So I'm just rolling with Management Studio and saying, I don't think Azure Data Studio offers very much. Also, Azure Data Studio works great when you have a relatively small number of servers. Once you start talking about 100 servers, especially if you want multi-server queries,
Right.
it's not a very good option.
Mm.
So Mike asks, so you're saying automatic updates is a double-edged sword or just something that you have to get used to? He believes it's the former. I believe it's the former. Yeah, automatic updates is certainly a double-edged sword. We've seen cases where Windows updates, for example, have bricked servers.
Oh my.
There have been cases where an update to this product, if you're in a specific rare scenario that wasn't tested beforehand, it could cause serious harm to whatever machine. So this is part of where a lot of companies that have the maturity and stability to do so will roll updates through environments and do testing before they push it out. Now, that's a problem when you're in a cloud which has automatic updates of servers, where we're just going to take your machine down on Sunday. Here's your patch window, Sunday evening, and we'll just take it down and run patches for you and then reboot it afterwards.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's not a huge amount that you can do about that for those machines. So also on SMO, how difficult is it to get started with scripting out objects?
It's not that hard, and as there are a lot of blog posts and a lot of Alan White has written an excellent article in his book on the MVP Deep Dives Volume 1, has an excellent chapter by him on how you get started and how what are the different objects and properties and the things that you need to know from it. So I would start with that for anybody who's looking to learn. There are a couple of articles on Simple Talk. They are old, but SMO is old. It's as old as SQL Server 2005. Before that, it used to be called DMO, I think, and I think it's way better than that. But yeah, there is plenty of information out there. None of that is maybe comprehensive for anything specific you want to do, though. That's the catch, is that everybody has, defined their own problem and written scripts for it, or they have varied requirements. So put your requirements together, and you may have to go through, some iterations of finding out what are the right settings and the right properties you need, and then to get it to work. But I didn't find it hard at all, and I'm not, even all that experienced with doing PowerShell or C#. You can do it with any .NET based language, but we use PowerShell at work because that's what that's our standard for most offline database stuff. So I didn't find it all that hard at all. Once I got used to it, it did take a bit of getting used to. It's not terribly intuitive or anything like that. None of their object models are intuitive, by the way. And compared to ScriptDOM, which I'm completely currently working on, this was a total breeze. This was really easy. And there is some borderline, I would rate their documentation on this for about 3 out of 5. So it's not terribly bad compared to ScriptDOM and things like that. There is some documentation and some examples out there that you can look into if you need to. So give yourself time for anybody who's looking to do it. Don't expect to get done in a day or things like that. It'll take a bit of time, maybe a week, I would say, if you want to write your own database script generator. But you can do it. And once you do it, it's, like I said before, it's way, way, way easier than what SSMS can do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Rajesh asks, what about scheduling different time windows for Azure? Would that not help patching? It can to an extent, but there are certain limitations to how far you can go with respect to uh, delay these patches. So if your process is that I patch in dev on Sunday, prod on Monday, well, as long as the patches were released on prior to Sunday and were available to those servers prior to Sunday and could be picked up by the servers prior to Sunday, then you could kind of work with it. But this isn't a patch management deployment system where we install these Windows patches, these specific ones, and then check them in this environment, and then we take that same script, that same process, and move it through each consecutive environment. So it's not a factor of let's have a fairly stable, gradual process into each environment. It's more of, well, how am I going to win the lottery and have dev get patched before prod, or vice versa? Because your dev servers may not be picked in the random numbers to get this patch just yet. So just like how we get Windows 10 rollouts at different times, different days. Let's see.
So
Mike
another
asked.
thing.
Oh, go ahead,
Go on.
Nala.
No. Sorry, I was trying to add a couple of things to what I was saying on SMO. That like it is with most things that Microsoft puts out, remember, this is not on top of their list of things to keep up and fix. So if you're using some feature like, for example, graph tables or something like that, that's relatively new, don't expect support for that to be added to the scripting model right away. They get to it like really, really slowly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was under the impression that Microsoft released patches every second Tuesday of the month. Maybe based on that we can do right. Well, that's for a regular patch release schedule for specific Windows patches. So, yes, a little bit, but there's a lot of stuff that comes out of band.
I like that. Sells caviar but tastes like bologna. SCCM.
Yeah, so Enhanced QC says, it will never cease to amaze me. You can tell people way smarter than you, that make way more money than you, that SMS, SCCM, SEO, WUS, or
But here's
SUS.
the thing though, with SCCM, I worked with SCCM, is that I still believe it's better than nothing. And I haven't seen anything equivalent. Maybe there is right now because my experience with it is at least 4 years old. But back then, when you have a really large, very sprawled environment with hundreds of servers, and you need to schedule them, and you need to know which Windows script was put on which, and if something happened to something else, that's the only way you have as a sysadmin. So
Yeah. So these are not instant gratification products, as Enhanced QC mentions.
Right.
People do want more control, and these give you the mirage of more control. But it's, yeah, I agree that these are not panaceas by any stretch of the imagination. And Anders doesn't like SCCM because it's got a server where it doesn't see 43 out of 800 databases. Well, I mean, if you look at the bright side, it sees well over 700. It's getting an A. It's getting 90%. So I don't see what your problem is.
If you have a smart Windows admin or somebody who knows SCCM, they should be able to figure out why it doesn't see it.
So it works fine on the other 5 servers. Yeah, see, it's working great most of the time. 80% of the time, it works every time, Anders.
Get your Windows admin on it.
Yeah. Solomon mentions, I figured Microsoft included Azure Data Studio with SQL Server Management Studio to force adoption, not from a look how many installations perspective, but from a SQL Server Management Studio is so entrenched that people aren't trying Azure Data Studio. But if Azure Data Studio is magically on their system, then they might try it and like it and switch over perspective. That may be a factor. I am a little cynical about counts, install counts. But it could very well be, well, it's just made available. Actually, I think the official reason is there are certain things which are available specifically in Azure Data Studio, not in Management Studio. And instead of trying to cross-port and code two completely different systems to have the same products, that they want to be able to have both installed where, well, this component is actually running Azure Data Studio under the covers, and therefore it's available in Management Studio, and it may not even be visible that this is Azure Data Studio doing it. So that's the official top line reason. The cynic in me says install count matters. And it could be for your reason, Solomon. It could be for that reason for sure. But yeah, a lot of it, the public explanation is new development is going into Azure Data Studio, especially for anything relating to notebooks, anything relating to data loading, ETL, ELT types of processes. Those are going to be more in your Azure SQL data, Azure Data Studio instead of SSMS. And Mala, you mentioned the one time you found ADS useful was moving a Postgres DB into SQL.
Right. So I was doing a bit of conversion, and I was happy that I could see both the databases in the same pane.
Yeah, the Postgres support in Azure Data Studio is not, it's clearly not as good as PG Admin. But
but it's useful for minimal needs.
Yes, absolutely. If you are not a regular Postgres developer, a regular Postgres admin, if there just happens to be a Postgres server and you need to write a query occasionally, Azure Data Studio does a pretty good job of that.
Right.
And if you're just trying it out, yeah, that's a good case for it.
Yeah.
Because it even supports Citus, which is the hyperscale version of Postgres. And
has anybody done like runbooks and created notebooks and such, or is that rarely used as well? I haven't had a chance to. When it came out, I was like terribly excited about it, but I've never had a chance to use it further than that. I know Kevin's done a few rants on how notebooks works.
Yeah, I would say yes. People have built out runbooks. And Anders mentions Glenn Berry's DMV queries. Yes, Emmanuel Meazzo, and I'm sorry, I've completely mangled his name, but I was never going to get it right to begin with. He has a GitHub repo that has a lot of Azure Data Studio scripts and notebooks. So let me pull that up. And that way, wonderful chat will be able to see the SQL Server Diagnostic Book. And that is in also in the Visual Studio Marketplace, in case you wanted to get it there. So that's over there, but also if you just want to go to GitHub and grab the information, there it is.
Oh, nice. Emmanuel Miyazu, I don't even know this person.
He's a pretty sharp guy.
Which part of the world is he from, Kevin?
I dare say France.
Okay.
That is my recollection. And Lugano actually is where he's at now. So
I'm going to play with these and see how useful they are.
So actually, Italy rather than France. So there we go.
I don't know of any SQL folks in France.
There are some.
Italy, yeah. France, I don't know.
So I got his name wrong. I got his country wrong. Um, but he's still a smart guy. That I did not get wrong. So check out the diagnostic book. So I've seen SCO run books. SCO is super nice if you have the dollars and the time to tool it. So if you figure that time is money, I don't want to pay more dollars to spend more time. But I've not used SCO. So good to hear that it's nice if you're flush with cash and have plenty of free time. But that problem of patch management is a serious concern for companies because you don't want to fall behind, and at the same time you don't want to just patch things because I don't know if we ever had days where software was really stable, but we absolutely don't have stable software today.
Right.
And trusting that whatever's out there will just work is a good way to have problems.
Correct. Well said, yes.
All right, our other topic for the night. I was gonna see if I could come up with more SMO questions, but I am no Carlos El Chacon when it comes to asking questions. So I'm not very good at having those off the cuff conversations in which I try to engage people. Instead, I tend to just rant for a while, and that soaks up time.
So if it helps any, SMO can do a whole lot more than just script out your objects. So it can do most of the SQL Server admin tasks via scripts. So like I said, if you want to look at Alan White's article, he has explained a lot of things that it can do. You can fix SQL Server settings with it. You can mess around with agent jobs with it. You can do a lot of things. Typically, most interactive things that you can do via SSMS can be done with SMO. Certain things I don't know. I don't think they've fixed it to do stuff with replication or failover clustering or anything of that nature. I don't think it goes that far. But you can do agent jobs. You can do server settings. You can do database settings. You can do a lot of stuff like that. And you can also create, if you're patient enough, you can create release scripts and create tables and create different objects and do anything of that nature with it. So it's pretty smart that way. I wish they put more effort into keeping it up to date, but clearly there aren't a ton of people who want to give up SSMS based scripting. So that's what I was told, is that the priority is low because people using it are low.
Okay. Yeah, that, from my recollection, that was prior to DBA tools taking off. That was the major way to interact with SQL Server, was through the PowerShell SMO objects.
Right. I think DBA tools actually uses some of them.
I'm sure they do quite a bit.
Yeah.
Or whatever they can. Yeah.
Because I remember asking some people who worked, Rob and somebody else too. I asked about it when I was working on it. Yeah.
Yep. Though my recollection, again, with SMO in PowerShell was that it was a very single object, single thing centric programming model. It was really meant for C# and didn't understand the notion of pipelines and operating off of those. So chaining objects together and modifying those settings and moving on and doing the next step in the process, that it was not as straightforward an experience as you might expect.
That's fair. That's true. That's fair. Yes.
But
that can be
done.
complicated. Yeah. Yeah.
So our other topic for the evening, unless chat does find a way to get me off on a half-hour long tirade on something. I have faith in you, chat, that you'll be able to do it. But thoughts on books and readers? So
I'm going to try a tirade, Kevin.
go for
Last
it.
time you said you had one with regards to people learning containers.
So are you going to do the
what are your
tirade?
thoughts on containers being the next hot thing that database people have to learn?
I think containers are worth learning. I don't have any hard feelings about it. Like if you came to me and said, I love containers for databases, I can understand why. If you came to me and said, I hate containers for databases, I can understand. I think containers are quite useful in the analytics space. They're very helpful in being able to take a model that's been developed and plop it out someplace else. And I think to that extent, yeah, I'm absolutely in favor of containers there. I would say I don't recommend it in production environments. And I don't think that's certainly not a hot take either. So it's, yeah, all I've got are lukewarm takes on containers. I recommend learning about them. I think they're useful. If you decide I really don't want to learn about them, okay. It's not like learn this or you'll lose your job in 1 year. Probably not going to be that way.
That's my thought.
So chat's they're trying to rile me up. They're trying. Let's check it out. Anders says, I'm restraining myself tonight. I appreciate that, Anders. Rajesh says, I might have one. Microsoft support. 80% of them try. Bless their hearts, they try. Solomon says, how do you pronounce GUID? And my follow-up question is, how do you pronounce SQUID? The correct answer is squid. Those are fish-like things. They're like octopi, except they're different. They're squids. Yeah, it is.
I love that.
I stole that from a buddy of mine who used to present. He hasn't presented. He hasn't done any presentations, I think, in about 6, 7, 8 years. So it's been a minute. But this was like his icebreaker before a talk. It was, okay, how do you pronounce this word? And half the people say GUID, half the people say GWID. And then, how do you pronounce this word? And the correct answer, of course, is squid. So yeah, I actually will tend to pronounce it both ways. Just basically, I'll take the way that the other person is comfortable with and pronounce it the other way. I think it's just my upbeat personality. And so Mike talks about censorship by big tech. In order not to be censored, let's move on. Isn't the entirety of Amazon.com containerized? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that. Although Amazon's dog fooding process is a bit more hype than reality. Like, they're not using their own services. They're using very specialized versions of services that they then release in AWS as the standard services. At least that's how it started out with S3, with EC2. That this wasn't just, well, we built this internally specifically for ourselves, and then we took the exact same code and made it available for others. That it was more of, we have the better stuff here, but then we've turned it into multi-client compatible code over there. That's my understanding of it, at least. That could be completely off. It's also my understanding of Google and Kubernetes that, yes, Google released Kubernetes, but that doesn't mean that Google uses Kubernetes. They have their own management system, which is better than Kubernetes. Why was there never a connection between containers and the Java virtual machine? I think it's because of Java. And with that, I'm not even, poking fun at Java people. Basically, containers are at a level that's going to be a bit lower. You'll want them to be a bit lower than the Java virtual machine. Java virtual machine is going to sit on top of so many other layers of things. And for containers, you wanted those direct calls to the kernel, so that you sort of emulated your own separate workspace that was wildly independent of everything else. But I think the layer of abstraction would have been too different. That's my rough layman's understanding, with the caveat that there's like an 80% chance I don't know what I'm talking about there. So take that for exactly what it's worth. Rajesh asking from your experience, is Microsoft Professional Services or Microsoft Premier Support worth it for production issues, or do you go with one of those two? I've gone out of my way not to contact support, but that's because of my personality. In my guise doing consulting, I will recommend to people, yes, reach out to support. The problem with it tends to be that the first layer or two of support that you get don't have anything valuable to contribute. And you have to go to layers 3, 4, or 5 before you really hit the people who know what they're talking about, understand your problem, and are going to be able to help you fix the problem. And
so with
go ahead,
Microsoft support, you have to know very clearly what you're looking for before you call. Typically, the situations I'd recommend you call, if you need to call them, is if you have a service pack go wrong somewhere. If you have a situation like Anders just said, SCCM can't look at, doesn't recognize these database servers. That's an excellent question to call their support on. Those are the kind of things that they are good at. That if you have a very straightforward question, like, this is not happening like this, and, can you help me? Then they know how. They have a run book. Typically, all those people you call have run books that they use, this, they check a few items and then give you some diagnostics, something to run, and they figure out. So any problem that is of that nature, they can help you with. More than that, like Kevin said, you pay for really high levels of support, which is not cheap, or you engage somebody who's a good consultant to help you. Like upgrade issues, service pack issues, and straightforward questions that you want answered, like, why is my SQL service not starting up? Why is SCCM not talking to this database server? This kind of stuff, they can help you. Not anything more than that. Like, you don't never call them for things like, my query is running slow, help me. That kind of stuff, no. They cannot help you with that much at all. They're not tuning experts. They don't know anything about that stuff.
Actually, I have a little story about that too.
Yeah.
So a client that I work with had a problem where they had a server which was working pretty well. It was technically an undersized server. However, it was sized appropriately for the workload that they handled. And then suddenly the log analyzer executable that's installed basically to ship log analyzer records on the machine started taking up 50% of CPU constantly. And as a result, this SQL Server instance, which was averaging about 40% CPU utilization beforehand. So now it's averaging 90%. It's spiking at 100% for hours on end. People are now having all these problems with it. So they reach out to support. And there's not much I can do because this is an executable that's installed on Azure IaaS machines. It's specific to Azure IaaS VMs. Not much I can do there, but call support because this just started happening. So support says, oh, well, we've gone through the SQL Server sizing guidelines and your server's not large enough. It was large enough last week. Last week it was at 40% CPU. Now it's at 90% CPU. What changed? The workload didn't change. The number of people trying to use the servers didn't change. The code didn't change. The data didn't change. Not substantially. It was very small, like 1% more data. That wasn't going to be enough to tip you over from 40 to 90%. And it wasn't bad queries. This wasn't SQL Server.exe taking 99% of CPU. No, this was some log agent service taking 50%, and therefore kneecapping what SQL Server can do. So they're like, no, we have to follow these. Your server's undersized. And like, okay, whatever, we'll increase the size. So they increased the size of the server. That didn't help, because now, with double the resources, the log agent, instead of taking 50% of CPU, is taking 25% of CPU. They're like, see, that didn't actually help anything. Your log service is still killing this box. And, well, you didn't follow all of the rules here. See, you're only running on P10 premium storage when you should be running on P30 premium storage. This is not a disk speed issue. This is CPU for your service. And no matter how many times you say that, no matter to which person you say that, it was so difficult getting a person to at least even acknowledge, yeah, this isn't SQL Server causing the problem. This isn't our setup causing the problem. And they tried one thing that was reasonable. It didn't work. And so the next support person basically said, well, you have to follow the SQL guidelines. You just need more resources. That kind of experience that's the painful side of support. And there are ways to shortcut it. Like if you know the right person and can get them involved on a ticket, maybe they can look into it further. But there are cases where it feels like a coin flip. Are you going to hit a person who knows what they're talking about? And this is not Microsoft specific either. I can tell you about back a few jobs ago, we had a sysadmin who had to deal pretty much on a weekly basis with, I will say, a major hypervisor company. There, I think I've anonymized it enough. But he would call them up, and he picked specific times to call, because if you call between the hours of 6 and 7 a.m., you get the Irish office. And the Irish office was really good at support. If you called between these hours, you got a different office, which was really bad at support. And I could hear him literally from across the office yelling at people because like, you are not listening to what I am saying. This is the issue. You are trying to do something else that is unrelated. Stop reading your script. Send me to somebody who does not need to read a script. And it can be very frustrating. And you know, on the support people's side, I understand why you have level 1, level 2 with scripts, because a lot of people call, I can't figure out why my SQL Server is not working. Okay, did you try to start the service? No, how do I do that? And then you go to services and you find out that, oh, auto starts off. Oh, okay. So there are scenarios like that where you don't want to waste the really expensive people's time and support, and you want to filter out those people. But if there was some code word where you could say, I swear I've actually done all the stupid stuff first, and it's probably not one of the stupid things, that it's actually a problem. So please let me bypass your gate for people who have done stupid things. If that existed, it would probably be abused, but that's why we can't have nice things. So let's check out chat here. I've been avoiding
so
you.
The other thing I wanted to respond is that if you have problems that cross multiple areas of expertise, like for example SQL Server versus SCCM or something, it is like pulling teeth. It is like pulling teeth because they don't talk to each other. They're just completely different siloed entities, and if there is problem even with something as simple as Windows with SQL Server, it is painfully hard to get any one group to take ownership and resolve it. Each of them keeps throwing the ball into the other's court, and you can be there for a long time.
Yep. That can't
Yep.
be our code. It's got to be over on their side. And even worse is if it's 2 or 3 separate companies.
Oh my goodness.
That, oh, well, it must be a problem with their code. And
Yeah.
they'll just bounce that back and forth. And you even get them on a call, and you can hear them just bouncing it back and forth on each other, just trying to get somebody else to pick it up.
So funny story. That's how once when I went at the company I worked for, how many years has it been now? I think it has been 12 years. 12 years, maybe longer. I had to reach out to, the call went to India. So because of my networking, I knew certain employees who worked there, and Amit Banerjee used to work there at that time. So completely offline, I had to reach out to him, get him to get 2 different teams to talk to each other. I think it was COM and SQL Server, something like that. I forget. But that's how our problem was resolved, is because we had to reach out to somebody completely unrelated, but he used to work there and he was managing, some teams over there, and he was nice enough to say, okay, I'll help you here. And he went out and he got these people to talk to. That was literally it, is to get those people to talk to each other and say, this is what I'm saying, this is what you're saying. So where could the problem be? Okay, let's give the customer an answer as one entity, not as, like you're talking to some completely different people. But that happened once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so chat here. So following up on JVM and containers, Mike says, but JVM and containers wanted to solve the same run everywhere problem in very different ways. Enhanced QC says container or Docker, less overhead, less code base, less stuff to break than JVM. Yeah, that's where I was trying to get at, that it's making direct kernel calls. It's trying to bypass as much as you can, including operating system. So it's a rather different concept. Sometimes with Azure, you just have to talk to support. True. And there are cases, you know what? If you installed this patch and it borked my system, call support. Or this database was lost. This database is corrupted. Somebody dropped this database. If you call support quickly enough, or some yokel went and deleted the SQL Server subscription because we give everybody full access rights to our subscriptions at the company, then if you call them fast enough, they can recover in some cases. So those are good cases where you would want to contact support. But neither SQL nor SCCM support could figure out my SCCM issues, says Anders. Like I said, it's practically perfect. Enhanced QC says lazy support, I suppose. Yeah, there's quite a bit of that. For my story, that's when that message came in. Yes, there was a lot of laziness going on in there, I think. It was, well, your server's undersized, so that's got to be the reason. It wasn't a reason last week. Last week, your service wasn't taking 50% of CPU. Today, it is. Why? Rajesh says, my experience with them is always 50-50. Like Mala said, if they have a run book, I'm saved. Otherwise, all I get is 10 plus recommendations and apply one. It might fix the problem. Yeah, internally, they're scrambling. They're searching through their systems, trying to find anybody who said the same words that you said. It's like, oh, well, run this thing. Do this hot fix. Maybe that'll work. And if it doesn't work, okay, well, let's try the next one. Because for a lot of them, they haven't necessarily seen the situation, or if they have, it's been so long. And also, in fairness, our environments tend to be so different from each other that sometimes I'm amazed software actually works on multiple machines. Malas, so you said, I don't know if they outsource support now. That used to be a problem as well. They're not Microsoft employees, just contractors. I know on the forums, a lot of those people are contractors, and you'll see them, they'll have different information that indicates that this is not a full-time Microsoft employee. So yeah, that's quite common on the forums. All right, so this brings up an excellent question. How much space-time work do people put into knowing their IT system? How it changes, why it breaks, how its usage grows? versus time spent routinely operating? Do we have some sort of meta database which tracks what is filling our databases? I'd liken this question to time spent securing a networked system, but sounds like surprises in database systems happen much like hacks of networks. Something happened, but what? That's going to depend on the company, Mike. And better DBAs who have figured out ways to automate enough of their processes have a reasonable understanding of when things happen and when it does, what is happening. And also get to the point where you can do projections. So, I mean, I used to have projections of database growth by database expectations and be able to compare that to actual growth and say, if you're above a certain percentage growth over expectation, then send an alert. So, yeah, there are cases where people will do that. It is above and beyond the norm. But I think it is a smart thing to do once you've put out a lot of the fires. In a lot of companies, you're basically just going from fire to fire to fire. And you don't have time to really investigate and understand the way that I believe administrators, architects, developers really should. So Anders was one of the first SQL support people who was not Microsoft. So now we know whose fault it is. The premier support manager for this area knows my name now. Probably curses it too. We were both sitting in on a call. I sent him a message on the side to get a more senior person in from another area. Yeah. Sometimes if you have those connections, it's good to be able to show, yes, I am competent and I swear that I'm not doing something incredibly stupid, because you'll get to make these relationships with the higher level support people. And sometimes you can pull that string if they'll let you of, look, you don't have to work on this, but can you please make sure this gets into the hands of somebody who's going to be capable, rather than having me go through the same explanation 6 times as 6 separate people fail to understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they all try to have me go down a script that doesn't help at all. We could set up a system at Dell or Microsoft that if you want to bypass the BS, you could do so. But if you did something stupid, you got to pay the dollars. I've tried calling so many times desperately to Microsoft or Dell. In my experience, if you don't have the Dell Gold or Microsoft support packages, forget about it. You have to have the support contract. Yeah. For companies, you absolutely have to have the support contract. Oh, goodbye, Mala. Hopefully she'll be back soon. But you absolutely have to have that support contract. So with Microsoft specifically, there is an arrangement where if you don't have a support contract with them, or if you have the very bottom rung, where it's pay per incident, if it's due to a bug or a problem on Microsoft's side, then they pay for it. So if it's, I'm calling up because I don't know how to configure this service, you have to pay for that incident. If it's, I'm calling up because your service is broken because of this bug, if they determine that it is in fact a coding problem on their part, then you're not charged for that. So there are routes, but it is a lot more difficult. By the way, I had a rule. The last person to admit that I may be their problem was always guilty, says Mike. I gotta think about that. Mala says, high-level support earns them a lot of dollars. Plus, part of the problem with lower-level support is, if you escalate, that means that they admit they don't know or can't fix it, and that is a ding on their performance. So they won't easily admit to that. So when I was a fairly low-level support person, this was more years ago than I care to admit. This was back when the Buffalo Bills were a playoff team. Before this time, before now. So that gives you context. Then at that point in time, you know, I never actually got ranked on, did you solve these problems? I was I don't even know that I was ranked on anything, to be honest. But I did have a point of pride where, look, if I think I can solve this problem, I'm going to try to solve it. I don't want to just bounce everything up to the next level. And sometimes that meant being on a call for 30, 40 minutes, just trying to figure this out until, okay, we got it. But I actually was ranked on how long my calls were. So they didn't like the really long calls, but as long as you weren't doing that constantly, then it was okay. This was a fairly lax call center. But I think that is a factor that you have to admit that you don't know, and sometimes that can be hard to do. Your boss extends the hard drive in Azure wrong. Anders, tell me about that. Yeah, that will happen. If the email starts with V, then I know my day is going to be long. Yeah, so the to understand that joke, welcome back, Mala. The V is external contractor. Anders says they still use V. That came from Volt when they started doing the Windows 95 and Office 95 support, I believe. Yeah, they still use V. They'll talk about V addresses. Enhanced QC is a Cowboys fan, and I do have this ban button right here that, oops, I just accidentally can click. Just saying is all. So Andrew says, then that has changed. We never got dinged to admit to the clients we didn't know. I got hired because I was okay with admitting something when not knowing something on the interview. We had one call last 90 hours. That's a spicy call. And also, yeah, it does depend. The admitting that you're wrong is more of a personal thing as opposed to level 2 people. You can't ever admit that you don't know something.
Right. That's what I also meant. Like level 2 people, it is a struggle to get the problem out of their hands and escalate it, because at least the ones I dealt with, you could genuinely see they were terrified that it would be a ding on their performance, and a couple of them even admitted it, that if I put it on record that I cannot solve it and you have to take. So this is when you're paying for lower level of support, but you need somebody higher up that is considered significant, more money and more time, and that also dings their performance. So they will not give it up easily. You literally have to pull it out of their hands and say, okay, you really don't know what I want, so I'm going to go to somebody higher.
Yeah, I guess that depends on the place, because
yeah,
that's a sign of some support manager who is trying to work the numbers. And, well, we have to get rid of 20% of the support staff, so how are we going to do it? I know, let's get rid of the 20% who push the most tickets to level 3.
Right.
And that's a really bad thing to do, because, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just my crazy mind. But level 1, their job is to filter out the absolute crazies. And also the people who, did you turn it on? Did you push the button to turn the thing on? Yeah. That's their job. If you pushed the button to turn the thing on and the thing didn't turn on, all right, well, let me walk you through some really basic stuff. And then we take you to level 2, who knows a bit more about the product, but is now along the lines of, yes, you turned it on, but did you plug it in as well? And then level 3 is where you start getting people who are much more familiar with the product, who are much closer to expert level, but they tend to be a lot more expensive. So yes, the major goals of levels 1 and 2 are really to act as filters more than solving problems. And if you're penalizing people for pushing up to the next level, that's an issue. So, Enhanced QC says, I got one for you. My boss enabled dynamic disks on the Exchange server one random Tuesday. Rebooted it and wanted to know what the problem was. Ouch. Rip that server. Rip that server. What do you mean we're taking essentially downtime every time the Exchange server grows? Fortunately, email servers never grow over time, right? And it was a 421 call, Anders says, so none of us knew it except maybe Bob Ward.
So I will confess, I don't miss dealing with Exchange and SharePoint where I work. Although I like Outlook over Google Mail in terms of the interface and what it can do as email, but I don't miss dealing with admins who struggle with Exchange issues and SharePoint issues.
Yep.
Yep.
Exchange is one of those things where if you said you can only use one service in the cloud, email. Just you take my email. You know what? I'll keep my databases on-prem. I'll keep my app servers on-prem. I can keep everything else on-prem and sleep well at night. Just take my email server.
Very fair, Kevin. Fully agree there.
We also had the benefit of picking cases out of the queue ourselves. Yeah, that's helpful. Where if you are more familiar, for example, let's say you know a fair amount about merge replication and your level 2 support, well, picking out those cases, I'm more likely to be able to hit this one. And the problem was that if you don't have someone like Anders, some of the weird cases may slip through, where it'll be, I'm using this tool that is barely supported, and I'm having this weird issue with it. And now all the support people are looking at it and basically saying, not me. Why can't I do column level permissions on more than 199 columns? And that is what we're going to wrap up Shop Talk tonight with. Why can't I do column level permissions on more than 199 columns? If you too want to gouge out your eyeballs, with you. Does Company X ever worry about Company Y scanning their emails in Y's cloud, to show ads? I mean, yes, that is potential risk. It depends on the nature of the service, the terms and agreement. I would be worried about Google because Google has historically done this. I would be less worried about, say, Exchange servers hosted on a cloud or private email servers hosted in a cloud. As long as your terms indicate that, no, they don't get access to the details on those servers. That they are administering the products, not administering the queues. And that's where you'd want to look into. Would never run a business with Gmail. Yeah, I don't blame you. There's
No.
Business Gmail is a little different from personal Gmail, because business Gmail, you're paying for it. So yeah, you're less of the product than you are with personal Gmail, where you are the product. They just want the metadata.
The whole interface, Gmail interface, to my mind, is for personal use, and it sucks in so many ways. I don't even know where to start.
The labels.
I'm okay using it as my personal email. I don't mind.
Right.
That way it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the labels and how you have to go through hoops to set up anything that looks roughly like a folder.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just want the metadata. Exactly. So, we are going to wrap up tonight's episode of Shop Talk. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, chat. You are as always the true heroes. Mala.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
See you in 2 weeks.